Great. We are live. I know folks are coming into the room, so we'll get everybody a couple seconds here to continue to join. But welcome back to Business Book Club. First session in February. We'll be doing 2 sessions this month. Very excited to be joined by the author of What's in the Cards, Cherilynn Castleman, for today's session. As folks are joining, please drop a comment with maybe what inspired you to read the book or what inspired you to join today. If you're anything like me, that list is long after reading this book. So tell us a little bit about what you loved and what made you want to show up today. Couple of bookkeeping notes before we get started. You probably saw that Business Book Club is moving to Patreon. Big deal for me. Cherilynn and I were just talking backstage about starting micro communities, and now I'm doing the dang thing. So we have one more session in 2 weeks with Andy Paul with his book, Sell Without Selling Out. So that's going to be February 21st, same time, 6 p.m. Eastern. And then we will be transitioning completely over to Patreon and to the private Slack community. So obviously would love to have you, would love to keep this going. I'm going to drop a link here for the Patreon. So if you want to learn more, check it out. Obviously, you know where to find me on LinkedIn with questions. But next month's book, which I just started, is called The Motivation Myth: How High Achievers Really Set Themselves Up to Win. I can already tell it's going to be a good one. And then the next month, April, is a classic, Brené Brown, The Gifts of Imperfection. So hope you'll consider joining us. It's only $60. So I tried to make it as accessible as possible, but let's jump in. So tonight's book is What's in the Cards: Proven Sales Strategies for Remote Selling and Connecting with Clients Post-COVID-19. Cherilynn, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Would you mind telling the folks just a bit about yourself to get us kicked off?
Thank you, Leslie. First of all, I am thrilled to be here with you, and I appreciate you. I'm just thrilled to have a conversation with you. I have been in sales since before Girl Scout cookies were 50 cents a box. So, any way you count it, and I know most people start counting, it's a long time. And I've been a global sales executive for over 30 years. And I have a vision that I want to see 1 million Black and brown women sit at the table of their dreams by 2030. And what I mean by that is whether it's a sales leaderboard, sales leadership, the C-suite, or even the entrepreneurial table, I want them to do that. The problem is that so many of these women, like me early in my career, lack the access or the financial fluency to do that. And so that's why I spend my days coaching and training women to be too good to be ignored.
Ooh, to be too good to be ignored. Yes. I love that. I absolutely love that. And so I felt so much of your lived experience in this book. I mean, it was like I dog-eared so many pages, like so many that when I was, kind of putting together the questions I wanted to ask, I was like, it's impossible to cover every single thing I would want to in this book. It's that chock full of actionable advice. But there was just so much of your lived experience. And I think often that like lack of authentic connection, that lack of embracing people's lived experiences is a huge part of what's holding sales as a profession back from being the incredible profession you and I both know it can be. So love that we started there. Love that you channeled your lived experience into this book. I'm very curious where you got the theme.
So first of all, let me begin by saying that one of my mentors, Bill Green, said to me, Cherilynn, when you criticize people, you raise their defensiveness. So anybody in the audience, you know what I'm talking about. You've been criticized, and you just get defensive. But he also went on to say, if you challenge people, you raise their game. So I want to challenge each and every one who's joining us today to take out a clean sheet of paper right now and just put it down on your desk. Because my challenge for you is that you walk away with just one thing that you want to do differently, starting immediately, starting tomorrow. And I'm gonna make it really easy for you. How many of you remember when the pandemic first started and everybody said the new normal? You remember the new normal, the new normal? Well, let's talk about what that new normal was. Now, back in 2019, do you remember when you walked in, Leslie, when you walked into a client's office? The first thing we did, three things. The first thing we did was we looked them in the eye. Second thing we did was we smiled. Now, why did we look them in the eye? Because neuroscientists tell us that when you look people in the eye, you're more believable, you're trustworthy, and they consider you more conscientious. And then you smile. And why did we smile? Because we wanted to connect with them. And the final thing we did was we stuck out our hand and we shook hands with them. And so that used to be the normal. Now let's talk about the normal today. So we're on Zoom, and the first thing we do is we look at the monitor. And you know where the client is looking? Right here at our forehead or the top of our lids. The next thing we do is we get really serious because we're on Zoom. And then we put our hands in our lap. So my first challenge to everybody is three things. And if you only take one of them, that would be fabulous. Look at your clients down the barrel of that lens. Connect with them. Let them see your eyes. Let them know you're trustworthy. Smile. Have a good time. And finally, use your hands. You can't shake their hands, but use your hands. And when you use your hands, you want to use your hands in the bottom third. So your screen has the first third, the middle third, and the bottom third. Use your hands in the bottom third, because if you go up here, you kind of start blocking yourself. So, right, use the bottom third, unless you want to make a point. And then you can say, I want you to remember three things. Look down the barrel of the camera, smile, and have fun and use your hands.
Oh, I love it.
So, so it was my lived experience of being on Zoom that made me want to write this book. And it came from when I was trained, we were taught spend 20% of your time building a relationship, 80% of your time selling. And I started challenging my clients, let's flip that. Let's spend 80% of our time building relationships, connecting with our clients, immersing ourselves in their world, discovering them, and then 20% solutioning. And that's what I wrote the book about, is being authentic, being vulnerable, building a relationship, and spending 80% of your time doing that. Then you're not negotiating, you're not selling, you are solutioning and collaborating.
I love that. And I mean, that's why you are the relationship seller. Let me pull in that thread about being a little bit vulnerable. Or even in chapter 1, you sort of give us the challenge that it's okay to even be a little bit awkward with our prospects, with our customers. And I think that this is really uncommon advice. I think it's spot on, because I have seen in my own career, just being myself, being that like quirky, kind of weird, kind of nerdy person, that's what has really drawn a lot of my clients and my community to me. But the brass tacks is that it can be difficult to strike that balance. And I think it can maybe be a little bit scary. And that's particularly true for anybody who feels like they need to mask in a professional setting. So I would love to hear your advice on like how to overcome that fear, how to strike that balance.
So my challenge for people is connect on the emotion. Don't worry about the experience, but you want to connect on the emotion. Everybody has had fear. So talk about a fear you've had. Everybody has passion about something. Talk about your passion. I start all of my calls with my clients and customers by saying, the best thing that I make in the kitchen is reservations. and it makes them do exactly what you did. Okay. And yeah, it's a little vulnerable. I don't cook. Okay. But then I go on to say, the pandemic has given us new opportunities for dining and food experiences. What's your best food experience? Everybody has a story to tell, and it lets them tell. And so we've connected. So it doesn't have to be something horrible, but everybody's had a fear. So talk about a fear, talk about a joy, talk about a passion, connect with people on the emotion. And it's okay to be a little vulnerable. And if your kids are there, I have had to say, oh, my granddaughter's here or my daughter's here. I still remember that my stepdaughter was musical theater, and she was dancing above my head while I was doing Zoom trainings. And I couldn't pretend it wasn't there. That's the way it was. So everybody has an experience coming out of the pandemic, and everybody is going to be touched by 2023. Just connect with people on that.
Ugh, I love that. And I mean, come on, if folks aren't used to seeing, family and pets and whatever in the background by this point, then they just haven't been living through the pandemic. Even with my team at the very beginning of the pandemic, because we were just trying to find ways to mix it up. We played a game called What's in Your Fridge?
That would be easy.
I was showing up my hot sauce collection, my husband's mustard collection because he's Polish. So yeah, I mean they're silly, quirky, maybe awkward things, but they are relatable. They do matter. And in the book, something that really stood with me after I had, finished that last page and closed it, was actually your ability to go deeper. I think so many of us stop at sort of maybe kind of superficial authenticity. Well, there's a kid in the background of the dog, or here's my fridge. You shared some very personal stories in this book. There was one where the cops showed up with a search warrant and then kept bothering your family. And you responded by making them breakfast. The story shook me, your response shook me. I could never. You talk out of a couple points in the book about microaggressions. I'd say that was just a straight up aggression that you handled so incredibly gracefully. But a lot of folks, I think particularly folks that are underrepresented in the profession of sales, do face microaggressions, maybe fewer now that they're remote, but they're not gone. And you introduce a framework called the C.A.R.D.S framework. And I really liked it. And I know that's not strictly sales focused, but I really wanted to spend a moment on the C.A.R.D.S framework. Can you share what it is and how folks might apply it to situations they're facing at work?
Absolutely. So a microaggression is something that, and it doesn't matter if it's intentional or not, but you ever feel like you got a paper cut, it hurts like hell, but you can't see it? That's what a microaggression is. It's a microaggression against a group of people. I remember once that I was sitting at a table at a sales kickoff, and I was head of client success, and the guy I was sitting with was head of sales, and he was bragging about what school his kids were going to. And it's all white guys at the table, and he's going, "Hey Jeff, what school are your kids going? And hey Mike, what school are your kids going to apply to? And hey John, what school are your kids going to apply to?" And he turns to me and he says, "Cherilynn, do you think your girls will go to college?" That hit me in my gut. That was a microaggression. That hurt like hell. Now, he didn't intend. He wasn't, we had worked together for years. We had traveled. We've been out and done joint RFPs together. Nice guy. But it hurt. And so one of the things that I teach people is to understand the difference between microaggressions when people don't mean it. And this comes from Kim Scott's book, Just Work, versus prejudice, where people say things that they mean, and bullies who are mean. And so if you want to learn how to respond to that, what Kim basically says is that when people don't mean it, use I statements. I'm sure you didn't mean that. If somebody is prejudiced, use it statements. It's against the law. It's against company policies to do that. And if they're bully, use you statements. You can't use this space. This is not a safe space for you to act that way. And so what I do with the C.A.R.D.S framework is the first thing you want to do when any of that happens is just check. The S is, are you safe? Is this something that you feel safe about? A is, kind of appreciate where the other person is coming from and see if you can't connect with them. Then number O is, outcome. What is it that you want to happen?
Mhm.
Do you want them to learn? Do you want them to stop doing it? Do you want this just to go away? What outcome do you want? And then think about that relationship and where do you want that relationship to go? And so, but I always encourage women, especially, to pause and say, is it safe to do anything? Or do you just have to walk away? Because sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's very true. I think that's like the outcome piece was definitely one of the pieces of the framework that I thought was like really hit. Like, what is the outcome? Do you just want to get out of the room safely or get out of the situation safely, or is it maybe something different? And if you just feel like the best choice is to protect yourself, totally appropriate response. Yeah, I love that. Thanks for walking through that. Staying on some of the stories that you shared for a bit, and a reminder to folks that are joining us today. I see the chat blowing up here, so love that. Keep the comments coming, and if you have any particular questions for Cherilynn, please drop them in the chat, because we want to make it as immersive as possible. But another story that caught my attention, you told us that you had lived in a 2-bedroom house in Guatemala with both of your daughters and a Guatemalan family. And you share that story as an analogy to immersing ourselves in our customers' world. And like when we were talking about this, the micro communities, and like how do we get closer to our customers, and how do we get closer to our communities, and I think, like, with an eye on the recession, with an eye on what the new normal is after COVID-19, our customers, there was actually even new data that just came out from Forrester that said that our customers want fewer interactions with us, but they want each of those interactions to be more valuable and to feel more meaningful.
Right.
But that can be hard to do. And I know that you love to give tactical advice. You love to give calls to action that folks can use. What are maybe 2 or 3 ways that our audience can immerse themselves in their customers' world?
Absolutely, Leslie. So just a quick challenge is, when you look at the Amazon logo and you see that smile, do you ever realize that that arrow points from A to Z because Amazon sells everything from A to Z?
I didn't until I was explicitly told it. I would have never gotten there myself.
Okay. What about if you look at the Hershey Kisses logo and there's a Hershey Kiss laying on the side between the K and the I?
No.
Or Baskin Robbins logo has 31 in it because before the pandemic, every Baskin Robbins had 31 flavors. Now, I tell you this about these logos because once you go and look them up, you'll never look at them the same way. And so once we immerse ourselves in our client's world, we never look at them the same way. So I'm giving you a couple tips. So first of all, a 10K. And I think the 10K is the most important document that salespeople never read. Now, the 10K is an annual report, but it's not that glossy annual report that you find in the coffee table. It is about a 200-page document that every publicly traded company submits to the Security Exchange Commission. And you can find it on the investors page, or you can find it at the SEC. And they come out every year. They'll be coming out on March 31st. And if you haven't, my challenge for you is to read your client's 10K. And I'll give you a tip here in a second on how to do that. So that's one item that I encourage people to do. Another one is Value Line. Now, Value Line is a very expensive report, but every library has it for free. So you can go to your public library, get your library card, go online, go up to research documents or research tools, and look up Value Line. And when you go into Value Line, every publicly traded company, every quarter, the analyst will tell you what's going on with that company. It will also tell you what's going on with the industry. I had a client that was selling telecom, and she was selling into the trucking industry, and she'd been writing these emails and connecting on LinkedIn and saying, we have tools for the trucking company. And she had about a 3 to 4% open rate. Well, when we looked at Value Line, we discovered that the trucking industry, because of the supply chain, was dealing with stolen loads.
Mm.
Okay. I had no idea that people were stealing loads from other trucking companies. And so what she started writing about is they had a tool that could track trucks and your loads. And usually if your load was being stolen, they could find it in a few blocks. Her open rate went to 14% when she started talking about loads, because it helped. She talked about insights rather than just, we sell this. No, she had insights to a problem. Now, that once the supply chain settles down, that's not a problem anymore. But right now, that's what the trucking industry was dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Really speaking their language.
right. And so, if you want to speak your client's language, immerse yourself in their world. Read the value line, read their 10K, and as they say in healthcare, um, when Anthem sneezes, all the other health insurance companies get a tissue. So if you're selling into a small company, read the big competitors 10K and read the industry. So if you're selling into a small health insurance company, go read Anthem's. And what pain points Anthem has, I bet you those smaller companies have. So if you have a privately traded company, go read the big industry giants, and you'll learn what's going on. And if you do that every quarter when they come out, you have insights, and what you're looking for is what I call the thing that pops: the problems, the opportunities, and the pains. And so that's what you're looking for when you're reading those.
You know, I want to stay on the 10K piece, because I genuinely don't think I've ever, in any business or sales book I've ever read, heard somebody recommend going through financial statements. It is a part of my call prep that I've had in my call, like since forever. I don't even know who initially told me that, but like, I can't even imagine getting on a call and asking somebody for, 50, 100, whatever, and not using the 10K as a way to get some insight into what's happening in their own company and the sort of, broader financial climate. But that has also taught me that very few folks speak the language of 10Ks, to no fault of their own. They probably didn't get a finance degree or didn't have a manager that ever, like, it's just not common knowledge. So I really, really want to dig into that. I actually made a slide with your alarms framework. So let me pop that up here. First, maybe just because I'm seeing that some folks might not be super familiar with what a 10K is, would you mind just explaining what it is? And then I would love to have you dig into this alarms framework.
Okay. So all 10Ks are how the executive team reports to the Securities Exchange Commission what's going on with their business for that year. And there's also a 10Q where they report what's going on quarterly. So if there's any changes going on, I mean, for my important clients, I read their 10Q every quarter, but I always read the 10K. And it is, again, you find it on the investors page. There are no pictures in it. It is all words. It can be 200 pages. It can be very intimidating the first time you open it. I promise you, it's going to be very intimidating. But I'm going to give you this acronym that you're looking for the alarms. And there's 6 sections that I want you to read. And if you read these 6 sections, you will find their pains, their opportunities, and their problems. The A stands for the auditor's report. This is in the middle section in part 2. And this is where the auditor talks about disagreements and changes. You talk about a risk, you talk about concern and pain. Let an auditor say they disagree with what's going on. The second part that you want to read is L for legal proceedings. How are they being sued? Who's suing them? Who are they suing? What is going on? And this is in part 1 in the middle section. Then there's the auditor's report, which is at the end of the 10K near the notes. Then M stands for management's discussion. This is at the beginning of part 2. And this is where the leadership team talks about what their initiatives are, what their focus is, and what's going on. And then finally are the consolidated financial statements, where you can check ratios, you can check differences year to date. If you want an easy kind of hack, use CSI. CSI is will do the ratios for you, and it will compare ratios for all of the publicly traded companies' competitors. So I use CSI, and it's just a free site that does the ratios for you. Go there and click on financials and competitors, and it does the ratios for the client as well as their competitors. So if you read these three sections, these six sections, and get in the habit of reading them, you can usually review a 10K in about 15 to 30 minutes. We're talking once a year to know what's going on with that company.
Yep. It's one of those things that seems maybe a bit overwhelming, or it seems a bit intimidating. Your framework breaks it down beautifully. And the point that you just made, it's a once a year activity and you can do it in 15, 30 minutes. It's not this huge project. If folks are just getting started, let's say they've never looked at a 10K before, they pull up your framework and they're still like, oh my, like I'm still feeling a little lost. Like what kind of client should they start with, or where should they start, or like what comes next?
So here's what I would do. I wouldn't start with a client. So I would pull up your favorite company. If you love Nike, pull up Nike's 10K. If you love Starbucks, you like to drink, pull up Starbucks 10K. If you like to fly on United Airlines, pull up their 10K. And just read these sections, because you're reading about a company that you're intimate with and that you like. And so that's where I would start. The other thing that I love to use is use Control F. If you are selling a certain product and you want to know what they're doing around software development, or what they're doing around diversity, or anything, just hit Control F, type in the word diversity. And I want to tell you that any company that's putting diversity in their 10K, they're serious about it, because if they don't put money towards it and it's not in their 10K, they're not serious about it. So if you're selling a diversity solution, do that. And so hit Control F, put in your keyword, and just search and see if they're focused on it. And so that's an easy place to start. I started with Nike. My girls grew up with Nike. I'm not paid by Nike, but it's just something that our whole family grew up in knowing. And the girls have stock in Nike, and that was my very first 10K. And I will tell you, I hyperventilated when I opened it. It was 187 pages long, and I was like, how am I going to read this? And that's when I started figuring out, how do I teach my clients how to read it, and look for the alarms.
Yeah. So good. So good. I mean, the whole book, for everybody that's read it, I mean, they know it's top to bottom actionable advice. I might go so far as to say that I think that is like the single best piece of the entire book, not just because it's great advice, but it's great advice that they're not getting somewhere else. Like it's so powerful. It's something that I don't think most folks do, that they can start doing tomorrow, that could fundamentally change the trajectory of their career. I love it. I use 10Ks to make trigger-based sequences even. And I was selling a product that supported ESG and CSR. So I was looking for statements like diversity, like sustainability, supplier diversity, sustainability. Because if it's in their 10K, it means they're resourcing against it, which means there's budget available to me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so if you do two things to immerse yourself in your client's world, read your 10K and go to Value Line. I'm telling you, the first time you read the industry analysis for the industries that you sell in, and it's a 1-page summary, it's an independent analyst report, and then read what the analyst is saying about these companies and what their pain points are and what their focus are. And if you read them every quarter, you'll see them moving in the direction where they predict, or that they're not. If you read those two things, it's going to elevate your sales. It's going to allow you to have conversations. I remember I was sitting and talking to a client once, and I said, and I was reading your 10K and I discovered this. And he goes, oh, you need to talk to our CFO. And instead of selling into a brand manager, I'm now selling to the CFO, who then says, I'm going to talk to the CEO. And I ended up selling an enterprise solution instead of a brand solution. So your deals will get bigger and your sales cycle will get shorter if you do this, because you're going to elevate yourself into the C-suite.
Such good advice. Okay, let's stay on tactical advice for just a little bit longer. So one of the reasons, and we were sort of talking about this before we went live, but one of the reasons that I started this book club is that I saw a bit of a trend in myself, admittedly, and definitely like documented on LinkedIn, documented on TikTok, of folks like consuming information just to consume information, but not really taking the time to digest it and discuss it and test it and see, what works for them. And, I sort of saw that trend and thought, well, what the heck is the point of learning if we aren't really seeking to build that deeper understanding and build use cases for it. And in, I think it was chapter 11 and also chapter 20, you kind of pull on a similar theme of that deeper understanding, a theme of feedback, of doing retros as a path to continuous improvement. And I have always followed StrengthsFinder, which I know people kind of have mixed opinions on it, but I enjoy it. I've always found it to be a productive approach. But sometimes that can give me blind spots regarding my weaknesses. And we were even talking about, it's funny, because you didn't know I was going to ask this question, and you just happened to mention the book you're reading about identifying blind spots before we went live. But I'd love to hear what your call to action is for folks that want to get better at that process of continuous improvement, identifying those blind spots and doing the retro. Like, what does that look like?
Okay, so there's two things, because I think that a lot of times, whether we're giving advice or asking for feedback, it's almost like going to the dentist and things are flying out of your mouth and you really don't know what you're saying. I mean, that's what it used to feel like. And so I have two frameworks I'll share with you. And the first one is well and better. Every single time like at the end of this session, I'm going to say to Leslie, what did I do well today? And what could I have done better? And I'm going to tell Leslie what I did well. And then I'm going to also tell her what I think I did better. And so whenever I would go in and call on a client, when I'm walking out, I'd say, okay, Cherilynn, what did you do well? And I think of one or two things I did well. And then I say, what could you have done better? Mm-hmm. And I always want to challenge myself about what I could have done better. And if I'm ever with my manager or team members or anything, and it almost became a joke with my team that they would walk out of a client meeting and we'd be standing in the parking lot and they go, okay, Cherilynn, this is what I did well. What do you think I did well? And so well and better is a framework. I use it over and over again. And also, you want to connect with your clients. When you do your QBR, ask your clients what you're doing well and what you've done better. You'll never be surprised about them terminating a contract, because if you ask them what you could do better, they're going to tell you. The second framework that I use is I encourage you to go into your manager and ask your manager, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate me as an account manager? How would you rate me as a business development exec? Whatever your title is, it doesn't matter what number they give you. I don't care if they say you're a 2 or a 9.5. The next question is the most important question. And you ask your manager, what do I need to do to be a 10 in your eyes? And then, that white sheet of paper that I told you, you take it with you and you start writing. I don't care if your manager says you need to stand on your head in the corner of the room. Write. You just write down everything they say. And you only say 3 things. You don't want to say, yeah, but I was sick that week, or yeah, but no, it is, you just write. And it doesn't matter what they say. And then if they say something that you don't understand, you can say, how do you mean? Or tell me more, or thank you. And you just keep writing. And then when you're done, go and ask a couple of your colleagues the same question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate me as a business development executive? And you write that down. When you get back to your office, you're going to have a list of what everybody thinks you could do to be a 10, and your blind spot is in there. I guarantee you it will be in there. And then you come up with a development plan to close that gap.
Yeah. That's very actionable. Scary, maybe, to put yourself out there, but that's I think one of my absolute favorite things about sales, for sure, and I think it exists in a lot of professions, is that there's always something new to learn and something new that we can explore. So sales is such a profession that is deeply rooted in a process of continuous improvement. And that's what makes it fun, is there's always something new to try and learn, in a direction to grow in.
Yeah. So you can either get better or growth. And we all know if you're growing, it's going to hurt a little bit. And so that's what I mean. If you want to be top of your game and you want to master sales, you have to have a growth mindset. You have to be
Mm,
committed to growth. And so these are two frameworks you can use to leverage experts around you, your colleagues, your friends. And here's another tip for you. If you want to be a better partner, a better mother, or a better father, ask your spouse or your partner or your kids to rate you on a scale of 1 to 10. All right.
I,
I used to call it the mother report card, and I would, my kids would get their report cards, and I would say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate me as a mom? And what do I need to do to be a 10 in your eyes? And I'm telling you, kids are brutally honest, but if they tell you over and over again, you need to spend more time with them,
better listen.
yeah, you probably need to spend more time with them.
I'm gonna get off of this and walk into my living room and sit down with my husband and be like, so he's gonna be like, what's happening here? Cherilynn told me to do it.
Yeah.
No,
And like I said, you can blame me and tell them, just say, I'm committed. I really am committed to growth. Be brutally honest. And, I always tell people, if given the choice between right and kind, be kind. This is when you want to tell your kids and your spouse, don't be kind, just be right. Just tell me what it is.
yes, I love that. Given the choice between right and kind, be kind.
That's
Yeah.
right. Always choose kindness.
Kindness doesn't cost a thing. Oh, I love that. And
curiosity and kindness.
yes, I love that. And like you've sold through a recession, I've sold through a recession. I think some of the folks that have joined us tonight probably have, some have not. And what I know to be true about my experience with the recession is that if you are not seeking that continuous improvement, if you are not proactively finding new ways to have more meaningful, more valuable conversations with your customers, finding new ways to identify your blind spots and then solve for them, whether that's a free class or extra, whatever it is, it's you're gonna find it to be an especially tough climate to sell in. I'd love to hear from folks that are joining us. If you guys want to drop a comment with any great advice you have on that, like that process of continuous improvement and what you found really works, and share the knowledge. Is there one thing for you besides that conversation of what am I doing well, what am I doing better, that you found has really worked in conversations with maybe like not a manager so much, but the sort of like cross-functional ecosystem in your company?
So I always challenge companies and team members and people. And one of the ways to do that is go back to your company's mission and values and vision. And so if you realize that if you look around the table and you're not seeing the diversity that you'd like to see around your sales table, then challenge the company. But rather than saying, oh, I wish there were more Black women at the table, just, go back to your values and go back to your missions and say, look, our mission says this. What can we do to challenge ourselves and do a better job? And so what we want to do, especially during these times, is have empathy. And empathy is being present and understand what it's like for somebody else. And then challenging them and raising their game. And so I think that that's an important way to go to your leadership when you want to do something, or you want to see a change, or you can have your maverick moment, but just do challenging versus criticizing.
Oof. I love that. And you have a chapter on empathy, and I really want to dig into that. Very, perfect segue to that. And I lead this interactive coaching workshop series, and one of the sessions is on active listening. And folks always show up thinking that I'm going to just teach them to magically be a better listener. And what I so deeply focus on is actually empathy and curiosity and seeking to understand. And so many of those same themes, I think, were throughout the book, and particularly in the chapter on empathy, I saw a lot of those. I have a mindful listening framework that I'll share with folks, but I want to talk about, let me share this screen because you actually have an empathy quiz in the book. I took it. Great news, I passed.
Excellent. Good for you. I would say most you can when after you take the quiz, you'll see the results from everybody else who's taken it, and most people fall in the middle that they are not empath extraordinaires. You know, they're not empathetic, and so they have opportunities for growth there.
Well, I'm going to drop it here. I'm putting it into the chat on LinkedIn. So for anybody that wants to take this empathy quiz, please head to Cherilynn's website and do that. And, you know, it's funny. So the book we're reading in 2 weeks, Sell Without Selling Out, Andy has a quiz in there to figure out, you know, like where you are on the spectrum of selling out to selling in. And obviously, like the concept of selling in is what I have dedicated my professional life to. So I thought I'd just ace it, and I took it. And I think I got like 80, you know, like 80% or something. Like I did not nail it. And was like, yep, just a reminder that there's always more work to be done. But that's okay. That's okay. What I guess maybe let's dive into empathy a little bit, because I think to an extent, empathy has become a bit of a buzzword, right? Like, like you hear it, everybody says you need to do, and everybody says that you need to have EQ. I deposit that it is going to be, you know, even more important to be empathetic, to be that empathetic listener in the lens of a recession. But how? Like, what does it actually mean in action?
So let me start by talking about 3 levels of listening just very quickly. So level 1 is what I call restaurant listening. You go into a restaurant and the waiter or waitress says, we have fish and we have steak and we have roasted vegetables. And in your head, you're going, I just had steak. Maybe I should eat fish. You're not listening to them. You're having a conversation in your head. And so many salespeople, we do that. As soon as the client starts talking, we're going, oh, I know what I'm going to sell them. That's level 1. Level 2 is what I learned in sales training. It is, you know, it's that when it's reflective listening. The client says, oh, I'm really sad that this is not working. And you say, oh, so you're sad. You're listening, you're reflecting back.
Mm-hmm.
Level 3 is listening between the words about what's not being said. You're listening for values. You're listening for emotions. You're listening for themes. For example, I have a client that was sharing with me after she took the empathetic listening course. Now, she is a customer support person. She's not actually in sales. She's sales support. And the BD executive was negotiating hard with this client on pricing. And they started talking about data integrity. And the client paused and kind of choked up a little bit. And then the salesperson went right back to pitching the product, which was not about data. And she said, wait a minute. She goes, I'm going to jump in here for a second. She goes, tell me what's going on with your data. And the client just spilled his guts. And he was like, you know, our data is not very good. And this is a big pain point. And she did a really good discovery interview using what I call the 4 F's. And she asked, what did they do? What was their finest? What did they do well? What was their failure? What could they have done better? And what did the future look like if they had great data? Well, she ended up selling a data solution that was worth more than the original pitch. The client did not negotiate on price. The client paid full price, and all because she listened for what was not being said. She just saw the client get a little nervous and upset when he started talking about data. So empathy is being present. Now, one of the things that I encourage people to do is what I call box breathing. And I talk about this in the book. And I'm just going to take a second, because what a box breath is, and I want everybody who's on here just for a second, sit up tall for me with a second and take a deep breath into the count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it at the top. 2, 3, 4. Blow it out. 2, 3, 4. And hold it on the bottom. 2, 3, 4. Now, what a box breath does is it quiets your brain, slows your heart rate, and lowers your blood pressure. And now all that noise is not going on in your head, and you can listen to what the client is not saying. And so the next time you do a discovery call with a client, or the next time you're on with a client, try taking a box breath and listen to what's not being said. That's what empathetic listening is.
Ooh, I love that. The box breathing, like another thing that I don't think I've ever read in a sales book, but is like, I mean, I have the calm.com app. I do breath work all of the time for that. It gives me that moment of peace, that moment of calm. And then when you're in the moments where you're negotiating or where you are in an important client pitch and emotions are high, it gives you those tools to say, okay, I need to take that breath and I need to take a second because I need to really make sure that I'm not hearing to hear. Like I'm listening with the intent to gain a deeper understanding of what the words they're saying actually mean. Yeah, I love that. There's the active listening framework or mindful listening framework that I shared. The second part is resist. And it's like so reflective of what you just shared, Cherilynn, because I think often when people hear active listening, they just think not talking or not interrupting.
Right.
And it is so much deeper than that. It's that concept of empathetic listening and hearing what they're not saying that really makes the difference. Ugh. It's giving me the feels.
That's awesome. And you know what? One of the best words you can use with a client when they're talking is they call it the golden silence. So you pause and you say and if you say and to a client, they're going to keep talking.
You know what that reminds me of? I think the movie is called Dude, Where's Your Car? Have you ever seen it?
Oh,
very, very like silly, like terrible, like bottom of the barrel comedy. It has like Ashton Kutcher and somebody else in it. But there is a scene where they go through a drive-through and, they each place their order. And then the drive-through service agent says, and they kind of look at each other and then order something else. And they look at each other and it just goes on and on.
Well, yeah. So we don't want to abuse it because you can't abuse it. But if a client is telling you something and you're hearing a lot of good stuff, and so instead of you just say, and lean in and watch what happens. Or I'll say, tell me more.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really curious. And so empathetic listening is curiosity. It is connecting and it's telling that person, I see you, I hear you, I appreciate you, and I value you.
Mm-hmm.
Rarely do people tell us that. Clients love it when you do that. Be present with them. Quiet your brain. Let everything else you're worried about go away.
Powerful stuff. I know we're close to time, and there's one other topic that I think is extremely powerful and meaningful that I want to make sure we have a chance to touch on. In chapter 21, you talk about mentors and you outline like how there are different sort of types of mentors, which I want you to dig into: coaches, mentors, sponsors. And, I'd love to hear from the audience if they have a coach or a mentor, or maybe they want one and they are struggling to find one. I know that's something that I found to be true for the entire first half of my career. And then I really changed my take on what a mentor is and what it means. And I can certainly share that. But I thought the way that you mapped it out in that chapter was quite elegant and was certainly like another new way of me thinking about it. So can you dig into that a bit? What is the difference between a coach, a mentor, a sponsor, and how should our audience think about leveraging them?
Okay. So when you think about a coach, think about somebody who's going to close a gap. So the question you ask yourself, where I am today and where do I want to be tomorrow? And so if I gave you a realistic magic wand and you close your eyes and you opened your eyes and it's now today's date, 2024, exactly a year from today, a coach can help you get from here to here. They are about closing that gap to where you want to be. A mentor, think of a mentor as a master. You're on a journey and you need a guide. You need somebody to help you avoid the landmines. So a mentor is somebody who is a master. They know what they're doing. They've been there. And I think you need two mentors, a minimum of two mentors. You need one who's a master at what you're doing. So you want the top salesperson. So when I talk about my mentor was Bill Green was known as the customer guy. He was the top thought leader around retaining customers, growing customers before he became the CEO. And so I wanted to have a conversation with him. I never went to Bill and said, Bill, will you be my mentor? But every time I got a chance to talk with him or have dinner with him or meet with him, I was asking him questions and listening, and because he was the master. And the other mentor you want is somebody who looks like you. If you're a woman, you want another woman. If you're a person of color, you want an African American or somebody who's top of their game. They don't have to be in your industry. They don't even have to be in sales. It's somebody who can help you navigate as a professional. So you want somebody who's top of their game in your space, your industry, and then top of your game in somebody who looks like you, somebody you can be real with, and somebody who will be real with you. And a sponsor is somebody who has a seat at the table when promotions and raises and special project decisions are made. This is somebody who knows what your goals are, knows where you're headed, and they raise your hand for you. So if you don't get to be at the table when they talk about who to promote, who to give raises to, who to put on special projects, a sponsor is somebody, they may even meet with you and your mentor. They raise your hand for you. And you want to be careful that you don't confuse the two. You don't ever go to your sponsor with a tough problem. All you're telling your sponsor is, I was successful here. You give them occasional updates. Your mentor that looks like you can take all your pain and problems. This is what so-and-so said. What should I have done? Or how, what should I do when I'm trying to write this email? That's what you're mentored for. And your coach is somebody you want to be real with. Now, how do you find a coach? Think of, I say MCC when I'm looking for a coach. You're looking for a master. You're looking for someone who's a lifelong learner, somebody who has expertise and success, somebody who can share frameworks and ideas with you. Number two, you want somebody who's a collaborator, who you have great chemistry with. You're going to be vulnerable with this person. If you don't connect with them, they're not the right coach for you. So somebody who's a master, somebody you can collaborate with and you have good chemistry with. And the final C is somebody who's a solid communicator. You want them to be able to talk about the approaches and the frameworks that they use. You want them to give you tools. And so that's what, and so that's what I was talking about today. When I talk about well and better and asking these questions, these are tools that you can put in your toolkit that you can use. That's what you want with a coach, is a coach who's going to give you tools that you can use when you're no longer with that coach. So look for a master, somebody who's a lifelong learner, somebody who's going to collaborate with you and has chemistry, and somebody that has great communication skills and frameworks and approaches that they can share with you.
I mean, the distinction between each of them and the way that you can have, somebody in each category that plays this complementary role in making sure that your name is mentioned in the rooms where you're not yet present. And then when you get there, making sure that you have the skill sets and making sure that you have the support to be prepared for success. I thought that was extremely powerful. And I think one of the reasons I was so drawn to it is it's something I got really wrong for like the whole first half of my career. I thought that a mentor had to be I thought there was only a mentor. Like I didn't make nuance for like the coach sponsor. And I thought the mentor had to be somebody who was a woman in sales that was so much more experienced than me. And I couldn't find that person.
Right. And that's why I tell you, and I see Rachel's comment here that she's struggling to find one. You don't, and the other thing I'll tell you, none of my mentors knew they were my mentors. I don't go to somebody and say, will you be my mentor? I would just say, hey, I'd like to have lunch with you. Can we just chat about how you're so successful? What do you do? I mean, there was a guy that I worked with and he was so focused. And so I took him to lunch and I was like, tell me how you stay so focused on what you do. Come to find out, he was a black belt in karate, and that's where he learned his focus. Um, and so I would meet with him a couple times a year. I would buy him lunch and just pick his brain. I never told him he was my mentor, but I learned so much from him about how to be top of his sales game. And my mentor was the president of the University of Minnesota board. I mean, she was in education. She had never been in sales, but she was a powerful, dynamic, polished Black woman. And I didn't tell her she was my mentor. I would just buy her lunch every once in a while and we would chat about the things that I was struggling with as a Black woman. And so separate the two. Find somebody who is top at what they're doing and just talk to them.
Yes. Yes. I think like just the simple premise that it doesn't have to be all mentor and that mentor doesn't have to be all things, I think is powerful. I'm a person that tends towards black and white thinking. So whenever somebody puts in gray, it is a valuable exercise for me. And I'm laughing as you're describing how like Bill became your mentor and you would, meet and ask questions and have that relationship. So that's very much like my mentor now for almost 8 years has been Josh Braun. I like maybe 3 years ago when I started doing a lot of like webinars and podcasts, I said on a webinar, my mentor, Josh Braun. And then afterwards I called him and was like, hey, I mean, I'm like telling people this. Are you okay with that? And he was like, well, I mean, yeah, I kind of thought that's what we were doing.
Well, I promise you that if somebody asked Bill, did you mentor Cherilynn Castleman? He probably would say, no, I had dinner with her a couple times, but I wasn't her mentor. But he changed my paradigm about so many things. And so, Bill was my mentor. And, today I have a mentor who is an incredible actor. And, and he knows about camera and presence and speaking. And he's a master top of his game. So that's what I'm doing. Yes. And so I don't say, will you be my mentor? No, just ask some questions and say thank you and share with them how they are making an impact on you. Mm-hmm. People like to see growth. People like to help people. And so just say thank you, send them a thank you note and let them know that you did what they shared and you were able to have a success.
Mm. I love that. People like to help people. And I think that's a perfect way to bring us home here. One of the questions that you ask at the end of the book is what makes your heart sing about sales? And I want everybody in the audience to either write this down on that sheet of paper that you pulled out at the beginning of our time together or drop it in the comments. But I'm going to take those words that you just said, helping people. Like that is absolutely what makes my heart sing about sales. Those opportunities to know that you truly made a difference in somebody else's life. Whew, take me there. I mean, the money's great, but the helping people is like that's what I think about at the end of a hard day. What makes your heart sing about sales, Cherilynn?
So for me, it was connecting with people. I love building relationships. Mm-hmm. And again, so I've had a lot of struggle in my life. And so I wanted to connect with people and say, I know what it's like to be afraid. I know what it's like to be in pain. And for me, that was the big thing for me is it was about growth, and I would grow and my clients would grow and helping them grow their careers. Because if you sell to a client and your solution solves things, you're going to help them advance their careers. If you're selling something and they're hitting their goals and they're getting their bonus, you're helping them. And so those were the things that would delight me when a guy would say, my wife loves you because I got my bonus check because of what you sold worked so well. That just rocked my world. I was like, yeah, okay, that's why I'm in sales. All right. And so it was helping people grow and achieve their goals was why I was in sales.
Oh, I love that. I know we are right at time. 2 quick housekeeping things that I do want to make sure that we cover here. One is you have some events coming up.
I do. If you will check out if you'll either connect with me on LinkedIn, you will see it, or on my website. But I am taking CC Presents How to Get a Seat at the Table of Your Dreams. Because if you're a woman and you know that there's a table you want to sit at, I can help you get there by learning the skills and the knowledge, because the table of your dreams has your name all over it. You just need to slip into that chair, and I can help you do that. I will be in New York, DC, Chicago, Atlanta, and San Francisco in April and May this year. And I'd love for you to come out live and join me. I have some guest speakers and we have lots of swag. We're going to be having a good time. So check out, connect with me on LinkedIn, and you'll get it, and you'll be able to see the cities and register, or you can also check it out on my website at CherilynCastleman.com.
Amazing, amazing. I'm really hoping that my schedule aligns with the dates. We'll see, TBD, and that we can meet face to face finally in Chicago. Cherilynn Castleman's website there for folks, and then obviously make sure to connect with her on LinkedIn as well, if you're not already following her, even though I sent quite a few reminders to do so. One last reminder for everybody, we have one more session in 2 weeks with one of my mentors, who I don't think I've ever explicitly stated as one of my mentors, but that's what we've learned is how it goes. Andy Paul, his incredible book, Sell Without Selling Out, that's back here on LinkedIn Live. And then in March, The Motivation Myth. We're moving to Patreon. We're going all in on the micro community concept. So I hope folks will consider joining us, patreon.com/businessbookclub for that. Thank you so much to everybody who took time out of their day to join this conversation. Cherilynn, thank you for writing this book, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to chat with you about it.
Thank you, Leslie. It's been absolutely delightful. And again, I appreciate you so much, and thank you. And I wish you much success in your micro community.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a great night, everybody.
Bye.